Hello, folks that are trickling in. Thank you guys so much for swinging by our Out and Influential webinar for celebrating all of our amazing queer leaders in CX for Pride Month. We're so excited to see you guys here. And also, I'm so excited to be joined by our lovely panelists. We'll be getting into introductions and lots of fun stuff here in a minute. But we're just going to give folks till the 3-minute mark to trickle in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. Hello. And as folks are trickling in, if you guys want to let us know who you are and where you're coming in from, we always love to hear that. Hello, I'm Sam from Assembled and in San Francisco. Oh, we have 2 folks from Toronto on the board. We're going international, y'all. All right, just giving folks 1 more minute to trickle in here, and then we'll get started on all of this good stuff. All right, and as folks are trickling in, we always love to get to know the group. So we're going to be launching a poll here in a second for you guys to tell us about your role. So be looking out for that here in the comments in just a second. Awesome, and just giving folks about 30 more seconds here, and then we're going to hop in on all kinds of fun stuff for our Pride Month celebration. All right, folks, we are now 3 minutes past the hour, so we're going to be hopping in here in just 1 quick second. But thank you guys so much for coming to join us here for our Pride Month celebration. This is our Out and Influential webinar where we're going to be celebrating all things queer leadership in CX. I will be your moderator today, and hi, my name's Sam, for folks that don't know me from the Assembled side. This is a topic very near and dear to my heart as a queer person myself, which I'll be chatting about a little bit during our webinar as well, but very excited to be here and very excited to just have the chance to elevate these awesome voices here. And with that, I'll go ahead and kick the ball over to our panelist, Hilary, and we'll work our way around the room.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hilary, and I am the Senior Director of Customer Support at a company called Sound of Benefits. It's a startup healthcare company. I've been there for about almost 3 years now, so quite a bit of time. And I was so excited when Sam invited me to join this webinar. Queerness in the workplace is not something that I feel is talked about nearly enough, so really excited to be here today. And Amber.
Thanks, Hilary. Hi, y'all. I'm Amber. I'm a senior client services leader at TikTok. Again, I am thrilled to be here and be representing all of those, honestly, the queer people that are in hetero-presenting relationships. Hi, I'm here, and I'm so honored to be your voice and excited to have this conversation today.
Awesome. And I'm so excited to be joined by you 2 lovely folks. Unfortunately, we did have a few panelists that were not able to make it here today, but they are here in spirit. Shout out to Susanna from the Open Phone team and Casey from the FormStack team, who unfortunately couldn't make it in today due to some extenuating personal circumstances, but here in spirit. And we'll be, excuse me, sorry. And we'll be continuing with the discussion from here. And just a few housekeeping items as we're diving in. of course, we are very excited to answer all of your burning questions about the CX space, queerness, and anywhere that those two things overlap. And we'd really love it if you could drop in all of your great questions into the question button in the bottom right. That just helps us stay really organized and make sure that we're responding to any questions that folks might have. So do drop those in as we go. And then also, we will have a poll here launching momentarily. We're always very curious, especially topics like this, about what brings you to our webinar today. So that way we can make sure that we are gearing the discussion in the best way possible for the folks that are here. So we'll be launching a poll here in just a second for what brought you in today. Are you a queer person looking for camaraderie, an ally looking to support your colleagues, or anything else? We're really excited to know. So please drop in a line there. And with that, I'm very excited to kind of kick off this discussion in earnest with our first question here, which I'll go ahead and shoot your way, Hilary. But how do you personally define your queer identity?
That is a wonderful question. So I define it as I am a queer person who experiences occasional sexual and romantic attraction to men, but predominantly, and we're talking like 90% predominantly, romantically and sexually attracted to women and other genders. How about you, Amber?
I also identify as queer, and I think if I had to add a specific label, I identify as pansexual. Again, love all, no judgment here. I love everybody.
Very cool. And coming back around to myself as well, I also identify as a queer person myself on my side. For me, I actually tend to think about it mostly as just an overarching label for queer without kind of a further identity defined within that. But all identities are valid and valuable. And I think that that's something that's so special about the queer space is it's really all about, in my opinion, how you define it for yourself. And it's all super exciting stuff. So with that, moving on into some more specific questions here. Are you out in your professional life? And if so, what has that journey looked like for you? And I'll actually kick the ball your way this time, Amber.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to take this. And I'm also happy to see some people from TikTok here. So yes, I'm very much out at work. I have really made it a priority to build a great team culture for everyone at work. And in that, because we have built such a unique and amazing culture on our client services team, I really felt empowered to come out to them actually in a development book club that we have. Um, it's just a really great opportunity at work to discuss like anxiety in the workplace or, other things that we may not always have the opportunity to speak on in a workplace. And, just speaking about personal struggles or personal identities and, showing up and being your best self at work. I just felt really empowered to have that moment and be that voice. I recognize that I am a leader and my voice holds a lot of weight. So I was really comfortable to come out to my team and come out to the whole entire department. And something really amazing happened as well is other people were empowered to come out as well after, which felt just incredibly like it was just an incredible moment. So yeah, just excited to be that voice too for people on this call as well. It's a powerful moment. But Hilary, I'd love to hear where you're at.
I always love hearing these stories. They're so interesting to me, and everyone has such a different experience. So it's always so great to hear. So thank you for sharing. My journey was sort of a slower one. It started about 6 or so years ago. I was a manager at the time, and I marked my sexual orientation on a anonymous demographic survey at my employer and felt like this thrill of being seen, even though it was anonymous. And I just felt so seen. And so it was so empowering to do that. So I rode that wave and was empowered to join our LGBTQ ERG group. And similar to you, had other folks on my team or cross-functionally kind of see that and go, okay, well, like I actually relate to that. I identify as that as well. And even though I'm in a straight presenting relationship, I'm going to join this ERG too. So it was very cool. I will say there were definitely bumps along the way. It was not all smooth sailing. I definitely struggled with the fact that I'm a white cisgender femme presenting woman in a straight presenting relationship. So there was a lot of almost imposter syndrome. Like, do I really belong in this space? Do I really have, should I really be talking, or should I shut up and listen to other people? So it's been an evolution of personal growth and just continuing to educate myself and continuing to learn about the community. And I'm in a really good spot today. I'm able to embrace it. I have folks on my team that are able to embrace it as well. So it's had a happy ending. How about you, Sam? Let's hear yours.
Oh, yeah. So I'm definitely out at work, but I think the thing that's interesting about being out that a lot of people don't always think about is I think when you're kind of on the outside of queerness looking in, you kind of assume that like there's this big moment where you like walk out on a stage and then you like I don't know, like maybe you like beat down a piñata or somebody gives you a certificate or something like that, and then you're just like, oh hey everybody, I'm gay. And then for all of time, for the rest of your life, everyone knows that you're gay because you hopped up on the stage and told everybody at once. But that's not really usually how most coming out stories happen. Like usually it's kind of like one moment at a time, one person at a time. Like you kind of come out a million different times, a million different ways. So the way I think about my queerness is more like it's just never something I hide. It's something I always wear on my sleeve. Like it's just who I am. And I definitely never like, or at least not since I was very young, I've never swept it under the rug. So for me, I'm out at work, but I wouldn't say that there was ever this like moment for myself personally where I really decided to be out at work. Because luckily for myself, like my whole professional life, this has been something that's been pretty clear for me as someone that came out in my personal life a lot earlier in life. So for me, it's just something that's kind of always been part of my identity that I share pretty liberally. But again, it's kind of that like moment by moment, every exchange with a coworker where you're authentic to yourself. That's kind of my coming out moment is more kind of bit by bit instead of kind of all at once, if that makes sense. Cool. So with that, coming back around, what advice would you give to someone who is considering coming out at work for the first time? And I'll kick this ball your way, Hilary.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me with this question is make sure that you feel safe first and foremost. Personal safety should always come first. And if it does feel jeopardized in your current work environment, begin looking for a place that you can bring your authentic self to work. I know that's easier said than done in this climate right now. It's crazy out there, folks, but I would prioritize finding a safe space first rather than just coming out for the sake of coming out and potentially suffering impacts, however unfair they may be. What about you, Amber? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, plus 1,000 to that, Hilary. Like you have to feel safe in the space, and it has to feel right for you. And if you're in, a space that you don't feel comfortable coming out, that's okay. Like it doesn't make you not valid as a queer person if you do not come out at work. You are still valid in the queer community. So it's your journey. You're in the driver's seat. So whatever feels the best for you, that's what you should do first and foremost. Sam, any other advice that you would have?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of echoing both of you guys, I think for a lot of people, especially especially people that are kind of thinking through this question for the very first time about if they want to be out professionally at work or not. I think sometimes there's kind of this underlying pressure that if you're not out and proud at work or out 24/7, that somehow means that you're less queer or that you personally are like less proud of your identity, but that's totally not true. Like I think a lot of the time we feel this pressure that you have to be like out of the closet or else that says something negative about you. But I mean, that's just really kind of a logical fallacy I think a lot of us have struggled with sometimes, but really it's all about like feeling safe in your environment and feeling like you're in a place where you can be comfortable being authentic. And I personally think I would never want to work anywhere that I didn't feel comfortable being authentic. And if I hit that moment where I've realized, like, hey, I personally would like to be out in all aspects of my life, and I'm in a workplace where that just really doesn't jive, to me, that would be setting off my, and it sounds like everybody kind of preaching to the choir, that would be setting off my alarm bells that, hey, it might be time for me to try to find a new place where I will be able to kind of more fully live out my authentic life. It's unfortunate that you can't do that at all workplaces, but I guess at the end of the day, my advice is thinking and being sure, like, that you do want to come out for you, and that that's something that's like authentic to you, and that's something that you really feel passionate about doing for yourself and for your own reasons. And then I would also say just making sure you're in the environment where you're likely to be received well.
Yeah, and to kind of bounce off of that too, Sam, I think that's why I have found myself in the world of CX because I don't know, there's something, and Hilary, you probably know this too. Like there's something about CX people in particular that are so kind, bright, creative, amazing humans that I think as queer people we naturally gravitate towards. So I have found like my life's work in CX, full like that's it, like that's my home. I'm not going anywhere. Um, but curious, Hilary, do you have like the same feelings? Like, do you feel at home in CX?
I absolutely do. I'm so lucky to because I kind of stumbled into it. That's a topic for another time, but kind of stumbled into tech and stumbled into CX and just quickly found my people and my community and found that I was really good at it too, which is always empowering. So I 100% agree. And I think and like we all have those little flags inside. Like the people that we're most drawn to typically share common traits with us. And I think I have definitely found myself in the position of working really well or collaborating really well or being really drawn to having conversations with folks that ultimately were also queer like me. So I would agree.
Totally. I think something that's really interesting about the CX space, and as someone, I work at Assembled for folks that may not know, and I work very closely with our clients from all over. And something that's really amazing about being a CX person myself, and then also getting to kind of be a CX person for other CX people, is CX people on a whole are just such an incredibly empathetic group of people to work with. And I think that with empathy, a lot of these things that we think about for the things that make safe spaces to come out in or make an environment just a good kind of warm, fuzzy place to have these kind of discussions, really a lot of that I think is rooted in a strong sense of empathy that is just kind of in my mind, just synonymous with the kinds of vibes we put out in CX, or at least with a lot of the teams out there I've had the great pleasure of working with. Cool. So moving on from here, has your identity as a queer person influenced your professional life? And if so, how? And I'll go ahead and kick the ball your way on this one, Amber.
Yeah, I think going back to a previous answer, as a queer person, I want to go out of my way to ensure I'm creating a really healthy and dynamic culture on our team. I think about that for anyone on our team, doesn't matter if you're queer or not. So, really, my passion lies in that culture building, creating those safe spaces, building those relationships with my team members and other people on our client services team. So that's been always my North Star, which is really why I fell in love with leadership. I'm a people leader through and through. Again, in CX, like I can't imagine doing anything else. Um, getting to serve my people every day, having one-on-one conversations, building those relationships. That's what I can hang my hat on at the end of the day. I know at my desk at home, I have a bulletin board filled with just thank you notes, birthday cards from all of previous team members. And I look at them every morning to ground myself in why I'm doing this, why I'm waking up, why I'm opening my laptop. And I'm excited. I'm excited to be there. I'm excited to build something unique. And up until this point, I'm really proud of especially the culture that we built at TikTok and our client services team. And I'm very lucky to have some people in the chat too that are a part of the culture. It's a unique one. So again, I kind of am led by, I am queer, so I want to make sure I'm creating a space for, again, not only those queer people, but anyone so they can show up and be their best selves at work. I know Andrew said in the chat, your job isn't your identity. Your job isn't your whole life. You are not defined by your job role. You are you, and a job just happens to be a part of your journey. So I know I always say to my team, how can I take care of you in the 40 hours that I have you every week? So when you shut your laptop at Friday at 5 p.m., you're not thinking about work, because I don't want you to be thinking about work. I want you to be going out, doing your thing. I don't want you to have Sunday scaries. I really don't want you to like dread opening your laptop Monday morning. Um, but that's always been my approach. And again, because I've created those spaces and because I've created that culture, people have been empowered to come out at work. And like, to me, again, that's just such an incredible thing that I got to be a part small blip in their journey of being a queer person. But Hilary, I'd love to hear your answer.
It's similar to yours, absolutely, in that I just love what I do every single day. And I love the ability and the power that I have to create these safe spaces for folks at work to be their authentic selves. It also goes hand in hand really well with my original North Star, which was elevating the role of customer support, no matter what organization I'm at. Historically, not that they're queer, but they have also been sort of looked at as this like outsider demographic or less than at certain organizations. And that's certainly not the case. And that's not what I believe. Customer support agents are the unsung heroes of any product or any company. So creating that safe space for support blended and transitioned really nicely into creating that safe space for queer people as well. Really, everyone should feel safe and empowered to be themselves at work. It obviously in a professional manner, but there's no reason to hide those portions of yourself. And I think too, having gone through a pandemic and having this transition to remote life, there's also been an emphasis, not just for queer people, but for everybody on it's okay to show your kids in the background or show your pets in the background. Oh, you're working from your room because you have to. That's okay. Just normalizing some of the humanity that we all bring behind our laptops every single day. We're just not talking about it. Let's talk about it. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's what I strive to do every single day for my team. Sana does that really, really well too. They do have a Pride ERG employee run group. When I first joined, the team was very small, and I ended up getting trained by our learning and development manager, who was queer herself. So she had already set the stage, right? She was one of the first hires on the support side and was already setting that bar, being out and proud. So Sana does a really excellent job of supporting its queer folks in that regard too. So makes my job even easier.
Well, I think that there's this interesting kind of common thread between both of your stories. And it's something that I've definitely experienced as well, where like, I think once you see somebody else in the workplace that's embracing their authentic self, it just becomes a lot easier to kind of have that cue in your mind that like, oh, this is a place where it's safe for me to be my authentic self. And that authenticity could be something as simple as being able to see your pets in the background and realize that like you don't have to pretend that you're like just this like beep bop boop beep doing my job robot that has no like no other preferences or responsibilities out there. And I think and even more important, perhaps even more important than the pet thing, though I am a big pet person as someone with 2 cats and a dog. Perhaps even more important though, on the queerness perspective is like once you see somebody that is like in your workplace and being their full authentic self and bringing that to the table, I think it becomes a lot easier to have that like flip switch in your mind that, hey, this is also a place where it's safe for me to do that potentially. And that's such an important moment to be able to give to others. Well, this folds in very neatly with our next question. So, as queer leaders, how do you support queer folks on your team? And I'll kick the ball your way this time, Hilary.
It's a variety of different ways for me. I think some of it is as simple or, well, logistical as making sure that folks have times in their schedules to attend the Pride ERG. I mean, this is no different than any other ERG too. We have parenting ones, mental health ones. So making sure everyone, every demographic feels comfortable to go to these meetings where they can feel uplifted and supported. So doing that, I try to be intentional about posting in our Pride channel as well, raising awareness for different holidays and celebrating things and just holding those deeper discussions within the group. Something else too is just I try to remain always vigilant or always sensitive to situations where discrimination may surface, microaggressions, harassment, and then actually doing something about them. Thankfully, I haven't had to do that yet in my career. I hope I never do, but making sure that policies and resources are available and in place so that everybody feels safe and queer folks are able to exist and make that choice for themselves if they want to be out or not without having to fear those repercussions. Curious what you do, Amber.
Yeah, plus one again, Hilary. Leading by example. I think that's the easiest thing I can do. Again, I respect everybody's journey with being out at work or not out at work. I never assume anyone's gender identity or anything. I never assume because you don't know. So what I can do and what's in my control is be a voice for those. I know in celebration of Pride Month, June 1st, we did an awesome sign off at work. We always do like a sign off, like, all right, y'all, like, let's wrap it up. Let's call it a day. And I'm just like, oh, perfect. You know what? I'm just going to like, hey, thanks for a great day, y'all. Happy June. Happy Pride. This pansexual princess is signing off. I hope everyone like has a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow. So like even those tiny little things, where maybe someone on another team that is in that chat may not know that I'm pansexual. Well, now they do know. And just like making those little moments, again, being a voice, leading by example, I think goes a long way. And Hilary, to your point as well, just being extra vigilant and listening. I'm always also trying to make sure I am up to date on any resources that we have at TikTok, any external resources. I'm constantly reading. I'm sending folks articles to. I know I'm also a huge Brene Brown person. So sometimes you'll catch me at the old time copier, which I swear I know how to use now. It only took me 30 minutes. I'm like copying like things out about like things in the workplace. I'm like, here, you should read this. Like, this is really important because we were just talking about in a one-on-one. So just going out of your way and making those moments, and then especially being support to those that have come out to you. Just checking in, even if they're not on your team, just like checking in, like, hey, happy Pride. Like, what are you doing? Or I'm going to this thing. Do you want to come with me? So just like going out of your way and checking in with folks and just, again, being that support person.
I like what you said about the little signals too. I mean, that's something that I try to do in my daily life anyways, whether it's like a rainbow watch band or other things, just little like smoke signals, like I'm safe, like you can talk to me, you can be yourself around me. So I think that's really important too, like asking pronouns or just dropping those little references to yourself or to others, like just setting those little signals, like it's okay. Cause I know we all look for them as queer people ourselves.
Yeah.
We're always looking.
100%. And like to your point about pronouns, like anytime I get a new team member, I have a get to know you doc where it goes through everything. Like, hey, like, what do you prefer to be called? Like, because you may not go by the name that I see on your email address. What are your preferred pronouns? How do you like to receive feedback? When's the best time of day to have our one-on-one? So like really just an in-depth, like, and our first couple of one-on-ones, I'm like, we're not talking about work. I just want to get to know you as a human being first and foremost before we dive into that, because I need to know how to show up for you every day. And that really, I can't tell you how many times people are like, wait, I've never had someone do this for me before. And I'm like, yeah, actually, this is how it's supposed to be. I'm like, I empower you to give feedback to any leader that does not do this. Hilary, I don't know if you have had that happen too in your career. You're like, oh wow, you're a new type of leader.
I definitely have, sometimes specifically in regards to like the queer support, but just in general too. I think leaders in CX in general don't do enough of that. I mean, we probably do the best out of like entire departments. I think we're, like Sam said, super empathetic, but in general, you don't often see that. I mean, my own boss gave me here's how I will work with you. Like, here's my expectations, and here's how I like to work. How do you like to work? How does this mesh with you? Like, tell me about you. And we have this doc, and it's a living doc, and it's evolved over the 3 years that we've worked together. And it made me feel really good and really seen, and like, okay, we can customize this to what works for both of us, myself as well as the boss. Like, it's not just about him. So when I do that for others, yeah, sometimes thankfully folks are getting better about it. So sometimes people will come from another company and be like, yeah, thanks for doing this. This is expected. And other people are just like, what? You care about these things? You care about what time of day we're talking? Like, you care when I'm most productive? This is amazing. So it's like one of those feel good conversations to have though as well.
Absolutely. And sometimes I think it can be eye-opening just to see how low the bar can be from like where perhaps some folks are coming from, especially when it comes to when we'll be talking about this in more detail on another question here in a little bit, but especially when it comes to folks that may be seeking new jobs where they can find a home where they might be a little bit more accepted. And I've definitely run into that before, where you meet people that are just like, wait, you mean I can like be myself here? And then you're just like, yeah, absolutely, you can. And I think as a leader, it's just such an empowering moment. And actually, something that hasn't gotten brought up here that I think is another important little thing to mention. So I'll go ahead and add it myself as well. Something I'm rather bullish on is also, once I understand what somebody's pronouns or like preferred way of talking about themselves is, I also try to go out of my way to enforce that. So as an example, like if that person isn't in the room and I hear somebody like use dead name or like dead pronoun that person, I try to also be the person that will be like, just politely like, oh, hey, actually it's they, and then just kind of move along. Because I also realize like I'm not somebody that uses I'm a cis person, and I use she her pronouns, so it's not something that impacts me day to day. But I also really realize that's a lot of emotional labor to need to like consistently tell somebody like what name you want to use or what pronouns you want to have. And especially if you're not in the room to be able to do that yourself, I think it's really important that there are allies in the room that are down to advocate on your behalf. So I always try to be that person. If I become aware that somebody wants to be referred to in a certain way, or like I become aware of like preferences that really matter to somebody like that, I really try to be the voice in the room to be an anchoring point around that.
Plus one.
So next up, what can companies do to support queer employees? And I'll go ahead and kick the ball your way, Hilary.
Oof. I feel a little redundant, but much of the things that myself, Amber, you, Sam, were just talking about, like enforcing it, those at the highest level. Speaking of being an advocate or an ally in the room for folks, even if they're not there, like I expect that same behavior, not only from you, but from the CEO, if they're in the room. Like, everyone should be held accountable to the same supportive, inclusive standards. So I think what companies can do is if you're not already there, or you're not already on your way, begin taking action now to eliminate discrimination, set up allies. Don't wait for the queer leaders in your org or the queer people in your org to be the change. we would love to not, if you're, able to, please move forward and embrace a set of values that include acceptance and equality, because we're tired, y'all. Like, if you could shoulder some of that for us, that would be wonderful. And then, like we've been talking about, just like those details, whether that's asking preferred pronouns and upholding them, being aware of microaggressions, and also having policies in place to address issues as they come up. Don't wait for the issue to arise. Have something in place. A lot of us are at startups, so these may evolve over time. They may be rather bare bones. That's okay. At least put something in place to start those conversations. Amber, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah. Again, +1, I feel like I'm on repeat. But yeah, I think like always be a voice, always, keep an ear out. Like, I think we are all aware of when things like don't feel right. And I also recognize there are workplaces where you may not know where to go, or you may not feel safe speaking up. So really seek out those people, those leaders, or those people that you do have that relationship with. Because I know, for me, I always want people to voice feedback. I always want to know what's going on, because I'm not on the floor 24/7. I'm not in everybody's home, when we are remote, to understand the dynamics between the team. But if something has happened and it doesn't feel right, come talk to me. I have more resources. I can connect with other people, and we can create the change that we need to see in the world. And as far as like larger companies, I think just making sure that we're highlighting queer people, especially during Pride Month. I know that there's a larger conversation, with the Target thing going on. But I always appreciate, I know it's very simple, but I always appreciate companies updating their logo to a rainbow logo for Pride. That always makes me feel good. That always makes me like, oh, cool, like, yay, all right, like, safe. But again, just like having those conversations and leading by example, even if you are, on the front lines, you're tier one, CX, you still have a voice and you can still impact change in the broader organization, because it only takes one person raising their voice, right? It takes one person speaking up, and then all of a sudden, oh, this person speaking up, this person speaking up, and then you have like your tribe of people, right? And again, that's how we can really create change as a group. Queer people, allies, like let's raise our voice together. And again, be the change that we want to see. We are trailblazers in this space, so let's use our voice and keep creating change to make a better world for tomorrow for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And something I feel the need to, I guess, kind of pop in with myself here is like a rainbow logo is amazing. I love to see it. Like, honestly, I'm like Amber. Every time I see them, I'm just like, oh yay. Like, this honestly makes me feel seen. And it also makes me feel like this is probably a safe company for me to do business with, or potentially want to work at some point down the line. Like, it's a green flag. The rainbow flag is a green flag. But also at the same time, like, rainbow washing is definitely a thing, and it's not enough to have that be the complete bookend of the story. Is just like, hey, we put up a rainbow picture on our Facebook page and now we're good. Like, that's not necessarily I think it's just important to keep in mind that's not the full spectrum of what allyship really means. And especially when you're talking about like your internal people and how you can guide them forward in this often very kind of traumatic world. That's not like everything. It's not an end all be all. And actually, I guess that brings me around to a really cool story I have for my imperfect days, because I was there during kind of the birth of our very first ERGs, which at the time were just our imperfectly out ERG, which I was very, very proud at the time to lead over on Imperfect Foods. And then, of course, we also had our amazing Black Imperfect non-perfectionist ERG for folks from that side of things to also gather. So it was super exciting. But the big thing I would encourage folks to keep in mind, especially from a CX perspective about things a company can do, is if those resources do exist in your company, and highly encourage folks to stand them up if they don't already. But if those resources exist, also make sure that they're actually accessible to everybody inside of your company, because a ton of people actually forget about how the needs of CX employees that have to watch a queue might be very different from the needs of like office employees, or don't even get me started about warehouse employees, which is something we had to really think about in our ERG for like, how do we service the needs of not just like our like folks in accounting and sales that could probably hop on a call whenever, but also folks that might need to watch a queue, or folks that might even be physically walking around a warehouse right now where it's a lot more difficult to collaborate. So those are all complexities to keep in mind, but especially as CX leaders, I think it's important to remember that any resources you do have, try to find ways to make them accessible towards people on your team.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Especially like, yeah, thinking about like warehouse people that are on the phones 8 hours a day and they can't step away. Like build that into, like workforce management, like build that into your schedule where they can step away and go show up and be their best selves in these like ERGs or extra meetings. Like making sure that that's built in for anyone is super, super important. I'm glad you brought that up, Sam.
Totally. And I can help you guys out with that, by the way. If you say workforce management 3 times in a mirror at night, I just like spontaneously appear before you. So if anyone needs help figuring out the best way to create accessible ERG schedules or anything like that, always feel free to drop me a line. So anyway, with that, moving on to our next question here. Is there any advice you would generally give to queer folks in the CX space or queer professionals in general? And I'll go ahead and kick the ball your way this time, Amber.
Yeah, yeah. Great, great, great question. I think if we're all in CX, I think we all recognize we kind of move around in pods. I have found like, oh, some person like leaves the company and like, oh, it's really, really great over here. And then like, oh yeah, let's move over here. Like CX people always stay connected. I know I worked at Stitch Fix for a while. I'm still friends with like all of the people that I used to work with at CX and Stitch Fix, Literati too. In the customer support department, I'm still friends with everybody at Literati. We tend to talk, and we tend to talk a lot. So I think my biggest piece of advice for a queer person in any space is stay connected to other people that you're friends with, that are other queer people, any person or that you just respect. Keep into contact with people. You never know, like if you're looking for that next opportunity or you're looking to move up and maybe you don't have the opportunities in your current job, you never know what a LinkedIn message could do. And just like building that connection and building your network of people. I find that I have moved to different spaces and different jobs in my career because someone else made the move first and they have referred me, which is great. Or, I tried something on my own and then I brought my tribe with me. I'm like, hey guys, we can build something cool here. Like, come on, come build it with me. Like, let's do it. Like, this is awesome. So again, I think just like being connected to other queer people, other folks in CX. Also, please don't be afraid to message somebody too that you look up to. Maybe it's a queer leader higher up somewhere. Send them a message being like, hey, I really admire your career. Do you have like 15, 20 minutes? Because we all know we all love to talk about ourselves. So they will say yes. Which is also, if anyone wants to message me, I am more than happy to talk to any queer people, any allies like in this industry. Like I always love building those connections. And I find that with every conversation, I learn something and I walk away with something as well. And then just the echoing, being a leader in the space, like leading by example. Again, you don't know the power that you hold if you do feel safe. coming out, you may encourage a coworker to come out, or even maybe not like out, like Sam had mentioned, like a stage and you're hitting a piano, like I'm out. But they may come out to you privately. And to me, I think like that's a really powerful moment between people. So leading by example, stay connected to others, and don't be afraid to send somebody a message that you look up to and that you maybe aspire to grow into a role that they have. But Hilary, what advice do you have?
I don't know if I have much to add to that. Plus one to everything that you've said. You kind of summarized it very, very well. So I'll just kind of double down on everything you said. Like, I am also open. Please message me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm always happy to talk to people. Just in general, CX support, but especially like queerness in those spaces too. So I'm never afraid to have those conversations. But yeah, I think you summarized it really well. Keep speaking up. I just love that feeling of community and like the little like, ooh, like every time you see like a little rainbow or like a little signal from somebody, or maybe they do come out to you privately. Like those are all really powerful, really cool moments. So keep speaking up, keep being yourselves, and just keep providing that community and support to others. Even if you don't feel safe coming out at now, you can still pose as an ally, right? And still start creating the space that you want to see for yourself someday. So yeah, just keep letting us know you're here. We're here.
Totally. Well, big +1s and +2s on my side all around for like both of the points you guys made. I think that that's so true. And Amber, I really appreciated what you said as well around like stay in touch with the people you know in the CX space, especially folks you know that are queer, because spoiler alert, we'll be touching on this in just one more minute. But I think also being in touch with people you know previously that are also queer is also a really great way to know where you might see yourself next. And we'll be getting into more green flags for finding new workplaces here in just a sec. But some things I would also recommend keeping top of mind if you're a queer professional in the CX space. One is remember that feedback is a gift, and your feedback to other people, that is also a gift that you're giving to others. And if you do have the space and emotional bandwidth to be able to help educate folks at your company about like the best way to approach things for you or for other folks in the queer community, and you do feel safe doing so. I'll also add that as an asterisk, and you have, of course, like supportive leadership and all of that. Just remember that people will probably be more receptive than you might think to things like, oh, hey, I'm so sorry, you actually got my pronouns wrong. I go by this or that, or oh, hey, like my friend here actually uses a different set of pronouns. Like, can we be sure to include that next time when we're thinking about like the meeting invites or whatever it is? And you might be surprised by how many people will just be like, oh no, I'm sorry, I never thought about that. And then like you might not even ever have to have that discussion again. Not saying it always works out that way, because there are definitely people that are less receptive than others. But strongly encourage people to just keep open. Excuse me. I strongly encourage people to just keep an open mind about sharing feedback with others as it comes up, because that could actually be life-changing feedback for that person, and also ultimately funnel into creating a much more inclusive environment at your company if you're just regularly giving that feedback, because if nobody's giving it, nobody knows. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of the time that burden emotionally shifts to the queer people in the room, because as Hilary said earlier, y'all, we are exhausted. But it is something that's very helpful. I think we can all bring to a company is that perspective. So that's the one last thing I'll mention is just if you can not be shy, don't be shy. And then actually, I guess one other last thing I'll mention is if you're in an environment where you don't feel safe as a queer person, I think a lot of the time, especially for folks that are younger in their career, we kind of assume like, oh, this is just the way that working is. is something that I hear from a lot of folks out there, is like this uncertainty that there might be greener pastures out there. And this is me, the queer person in your corner, you can reference if you like, telling you that there is better out there. Like, if you don't feel like you are respected in your workplace, I guarantee you there's 10 other workplaces that will hire you where you will feel respected. And just remember that there's always an escape hatch somewhere. All right. And then that brings us all the way back around to our burning question here. As a queer person navigating the job search, what are some green flags you look for in your new home? And also, we did get a very similar question from Gabby Rico. So thank you for raising this as well. And by the way, we will have a little bit of time for additional questions. If anybody has any additional ones, feel free to drop them into the questions tab, and we'll be back with you momentarily. But with that, I'll go ahead and kick the ball out to you, Hilary, for green flags when looking for a new company.
Yeah. So I know we talked about rainbow washing a little bit, and that very much is a very valid thing, but that rainbow is still a green flag. So that is something I'm going to note. It's a little data point. Oh, you changed your logo, or you reference the rainbow somewhere on your sites or on your application. Okay, like we're off to a promising start. So I look for that. I'm also sensitive to language. So small but impactful things like asking for pronouns on an application really stand out to me. So just taking the time, even if you're not sure if you're going to apply, looking at that application, I think can tell you a lot about the company as well. But also going back to what Amber and Sam were both saying, reach out to your network, leverage them, ask those folks, hey, have you worked here? Do you know someone that works here? What is it actually like? What is the reality for a queer person if they join this company? I think you can glean a lot of information from your network, more so than even the reviews or the information that you're going to find on like Glassdoor or elsewhere. So those would be my three things: is kind of note the visuals, note the layout. I mean, I do this anyways too, because I just don't want to work for like an old fashioned company anymore. Like, I want to work for a hip new one. So I kind of pay attention to those things already, but note the rainbows, note the language that's being used. And then also note benefits too. That's always something too. Sometimes they are listed on the application. Sometimes it's further along in the process, but paying note to those and how they're worded, even things like maternity leave can show you a lot about how they value people who can become pregnant. So using those data points and then your network. How about you, Amber? What do you think?
Great points. Plus one to like applications. How are they wording things? What are they asking you in those demographic questions? Doing research on the company itself. Benefits, Hilary, to your point, is a huge indicator. I always love giant green flag, any company that has gender affirming care built into their benefits package. I'm like, okay, yeah, like sign me up. That's where it's at. So that's a big thing. And I do the thing, I like to go on LinkedIn and I like to like look at all of the people that work in that particular department. Sometimes you gotta creep, y'all, okay? Sometimes you have to creep. So I go in, I kind of look at, who is the recruiter that I'm going to be talking to? What's the team look like? Try to get as many names in that conversation too, in that initial recruiter conversation. Try to get as many names as you can to then go and do your research. How are they showing up on their LinkedIn? What are they talking about? What are they posting? I found a lot of people that are out and proud on LinkedIn will have like rainbows in their title, or like how they write in their like little biography about themselves, and what companies were they previously at as well can also kind of give you some indication one way or the other. And then again, like having those initial conversations when you're through the interview process, picking up on keywords, like how are they speaking about the team? Ask about culture. Ask about, what's the feedback culture like? You don't have to ask directly, like, how would you treat a queer person? But you can ask these other types of questions to really understand the type of culture that you're walking into. I know for me personally, going through different conversations, different interviews in my career, you get a gut feeling. You get a gut feeling one way or the other. And here's the thing, y'all, trust your gut. trust your gut. If there's something going on, and I recognize, like, especially the job market right now, it's really tough, right? And there's a level of desperation that some people have, absolutely. But if it's not a good fit and it's worse off than what you are, like, really listen to your gut, be true to yourself, and say yes when it's right for you. Because if you say yes and it's like not the opportunity, it can be really, really damaging to your mental health. And you may end up being worse off than you originally were. So don't be afraid to ask questions, show up. I also like to creep on Glassdoor, even though sometimes Glassdoor, you can tell if they like pay their people or like give out gift cards for good reviews. Again, you guys can suss this out. We're all humans. We all have like that gut check. Trust your gut, talk to people, ask questions, and do your research.
Absolutely. And excuse me. I'm recovering from COVID, so sorry if my my voice sounds a little bit scratchier than usual. But I really love what you mentioned there, Amber, around like trusting your gut, because I think especially as queer people, a lot of the time we're kind of taught that like oh, hey, was that discrimination I heard? No, no, no. There's no way. They're such a nice there's no way that they could be anti-gay or whatever. But like I think we're so like commonly conditioned around almost like second guessing our gut because we want to give people that like good benefit of the doubt. But when it comes to navigating your job search and finding a good home for yourself, like my personally, for me, my level of benefit of the doubt is kind of much lower in that process than it might be in other areas of my life, just because like that gut check is so important. And the last thing you want to do is end up in a situation where you're perhaps like worse off than you were before. And one last thing I'll mention here is also if you know who you're going to be directly reporting to, I really think the person you directly report to can change so, so much about what your experience as a queer person at work looks like. Because, as an example, if you work at a company that doesn't have a lot of dedicated resources for queer people, but you do work with a boss that's amazing, or perhaps even queer themselves, like that can still be a life-changing experience. Or the other way around, you could end up in a situation where perhaps the company is like a fabulous, inclusive company, but perhaps there's a manager that you're going to be directly reporting to that's going to make your life really hard. Because a lot of the time, and we know this as leaders too, because we all put a lot of time and thought into like creating these safe, inclusive spaces. So I think everyone here knows how important that is. And if you have a leader that isn't willing to create that safe, inclusive space, that's something I would also try to find out kind of sooner than later. One way you can actually do that is perhaps searching up that specific person on social media to see if there's anything that is a red flag there. Companies do look at your personal social media, so I think it's all right for the shoe to be on the other foot every once in a while. And that's definitely something I personally look for is just like, hey, are you saying just god awful vitrolic stuff on Instagram? Probably not, but if you are, you're probably not the right boss for me. So anyway, with that, we actually have one last user submitted question here, and then we'll wrap. But have you guys ever experienced progressive companies not walking the walk? And do you hold your workplace accountable for supporting the LGBTQ community? Ooh, this is a heavy one, going right back to that rainbow wash. And I'll go ahead and kick the ball your way, Amber, for this one.
Yeah, great question, Kenzie. I really thinking about my career, I have been very fortunate. And I really haven't been in a space where companies haven't walked the walk or I haven't felt safe to be a queer person. Um, with that said, I recognize that I am probably an outlier because there are a lot of companies out there that, you know, they may say that, they rainbow wash and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, this is not the vibe at all that I'm getting. Like it's two different things. It's like Two-Face, the Batman villain. So I really think like again, as queer people in the space is understanding your resources, understanding who you need to talk to, building a relationship with HR as well. Like having them in your corner always is important. So I think for me, again, I've been very lucky to be in spaces where companies have walked the walk. But I always know that with any company, we can always be doing better. There's always more opportunity to improve and be a better space. So with that, again, I just go out of my way again to be just leading by example, creating those spaces for people to come together and like build a community. I know for me personally, I have launched a culture committee within our client services team specifically. So we focus on events either in office, out of office. I know someone on the culture committee just did a huge Pride Month post of like queer friendly places in the city of Austin, Texas. So again, just going out of your way to build that community at work, and just band together and be the change that you want to see. Hilary, what's been your experience with this?
I've had a similar experience as far as most of the places that I've worked. It's been a non-issue. There was one place that I did work that there was red flags everywhere, right? Like they just did not align with my personal values as far as how they were treating the whole Black Lives Matter movement, LGBTQ plus issues. They would not change their logo, for example, for Pride Month. That was not something they would prioritize. So no actual direct harassment, but certainly tons of microaggressions, not only to queer folks, but to other marginalized groups as well. For that one, unfortunately, the change was so widespread that I just ended up leaving. But I've been very vocal about it. And if anyone wants to message me, like I will absolutely tell you who that was, because it's not a safe space to work. It just wasn't. So in some cases, you have to know when to cut your losses. You can only do so much. And I think there's something to be said for also protecting your own mental health and your own work-life balance. You can't affect change just as one person, but certainly speak up, because others will join you and others will hear, and others can benefit from your knowledge and not make the same, mistake or not stumble into the same situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're just about at time here. We're actually 2 minutes over. I'll just give kind of a very quick little answer myself, and then we'll formally wrap. But I think something that's really kind of special about this question for me is I've walked into a lot of environments that perhaps were not directly aggressive or anti-LGBTQ in any capacity, but just really didn't have any muscle built around creating this kind of support. As Hilary mentioned earlier in the webinar, a lot of the time it kind of falls on the first out person at an organization to build these things out, because it's just not something that a lot of companies are thinking about, unfortunately, before that moment happens. And I really think companies in general should be more proactive about building that safe space ahead of time. But you do hit that's a common wall you run into when you're kind of the first queer person walking in the door. And I've actually been really lucky to get to be that kind of first queer person walking in the door at a lot of different companies now. And it's I think it's really important, if that person is you and you're walking into that door with a company that is supportive but maybe doesn't really know what to do, to advocate for things like ERGs or putting on Pride Month events or changing company logos. Be the change you want to see in the world if you're at that early stage where you can make that change. So anyway, with that, this is the end of our Queer Trailblazer webinar, but we really appreciate everybody stopping in, and thank you both so much, Amber and Hilary, for swinging by with your perspectives and letting me tell a little bit about my stories as well.
Thanks y'all so much.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.